Hello. Hope you're doing well this week again. Lots of stuff going on. If you want me grumpy, then stay till the secrets. I'm going to try to keep it on the up and up here. Keep you happy and positive about all the things that are happening in the startup community. The big news this week, of course, is that Oregon is well known for food, but it's known for more than that. So one of our organizations is embracing a kind of broader perspective on the types of startups they can be supporting through their programming. I will get into that real quickly, but first, some news items I just want to mention. I noticed this week that PDX Women in Tech, one of the most well-loved and revered professional organizations that unfortunately had to shut down several years ago, seems to be back. They seem to be rebooting PDX WIT. So if you were a fan of PDX WIT and all the events that they did around the community and the great community that they created, have hope, because they did a PDX WIT reboot meetup this week, and I'm eager to hear what comes out of that. Madrona up in Seattle, our friends at Madrona, who are venture capitalists in Seattle, but who have invested in Portland from time to time, put out a really interesting piece. It was shared on the Portland Startup Slack. If you're not part of the Portland Startup Slack, please join the Portland Startup Slack. Super easy, super open, available to anyone. If you're interested in connecting with people in Portland, the Portland Startup Slack is the best place to do it. But anyway, Caleb shared it on the Slack channel, talking about fundraising in the AI era. So some really good insights. If you think you're building a venture scale startup, if you're interested in pursuing venture capital, and if you're building an AI enabled solution, and I mean, really these days, who ain't? Some good feedback for you, and some good direction and insights from Madrona. And then another quick news item: Portland startup SkyPoint announced a fully integrated AI platform for the operators of senior living facilities. I didn't see a lot of news popping about it locally, but I just caught it at the last minute, wanted to mention it. I met the founder of SkyPoint long ago, actually at the Google Cloud offices in Portland way back when, in the cafeteria. But they've been doing really well. This was a big announcement for them. I will probably try and write up more next week, but wanted you to know because you're here and we're hanging out, and I thought I'd tell you so you'd have that little trivial knowledge about what's going on. Okay, let's get into the big news, which is our friends at Oregon Entrepreneurs Network, the OEN, as the cool kids call it, have had, these flirtations with angel investing over the years. So way back when, there used to be Angel Oregon, that was kind of a separate program. And then I think, if I'm remembering correctly, OEN kind of acquired Angel Oregon, started to run it, ran it for a long time. It just kind of ran its course sorry, something's going on my computer. It just kind of ran its course like so many things do. And so they kind of sunsetted that program. And then while Amanda Oborn was the head of OEN, she decided to reboot some of this activity with a really, funny and punnily named event called Angel Food, where previously Angel Oregon had been primarily tech focused, and not really stretching much beyond that. But Amanda Oborn's expertise, she's now the CEO of a cider company in Washington. Amanda's expertise was really in the food industry. She had come from EcoTrust. She had a wealth of knowledge, and she brought that to OEN. And so Angel Food became the reboot, talking a lot about reboots here, became the reboot of the Angel Oregon program. Fast forward to today, and Angel Oregon has expanded to be Angel Oregon Tech, Angel Oregon Life and Biosciences, and Angel Oregon Food until now they've now decided that food is really too limiting for that group. So Angel Oregon Food has now become Angel Oregon Consumer Packaged Goods, so Angel Oregon CPG. Now, what this enables them to do is embrace the broader CPG industry in Oregon. And, you know, as my good friend and former co-founder Mitch Doherty likes to say, Oregon is the Silicon Valley of consumer products, or the Bay Area of consumer products, depending on which reference point you like to use. Anyway, his premise was always that there is more knowledge, understanding, and expertise around consumer products in Oregon per square foot than anywhere else in the world. So it only makes sense that Angel Oregon decided to expand their purview, decided to incorporate more than just food and beverage, and now support CPG writ large. So I'm really eager to see what happens with the program this year. It's coming up in the spring. I believe it starts in March. So if you're interested in both the educational component and competing in that program, I suggest you take a look. I, of course, will link it up. And there's a whole like wraparound support and mentorship portion participating in any of the Angel Oregon programs. So if you're working in CPG, please get those applications in. And of course, I would expect tech and life and bioscience to be coming up quickly as well. All right. So congrats to our friends at OEN on this kind of retooling and repositioning of Angel Food into Angel Oregon CPG. And again, really look forward to seeing what startups come through. Are you on the social media a lot? What about your kids? Are your kids on the social media maybe too much? Well, that's kind of the problem that Dayo, a local startup, has begun to explore more specifically. So Dayo was designed to reward anyone for staying off social media. Basically, like they have partnerships with all these amazing brands, and they say, you know, if you can stay off social media, you can be on for this amount of time, but then if you leave, then you kind of retain these dollars, points kind of things that can be spent with specific brands. You know, maybe you can get some discounts on books at Powell's. Maybe you can get a Rumple blanket. Maybe you can get, you know, some makeup at Sephora, like those kind of things. So giving you a reward for limiting your time on social media. And what they discovered as they were working with their customers is that a lot of parents were really interested in using this kind of carrot versus stick to help their kids manage the amount of social media they consume on any given day. And so now it's not really a pivot, it's just kind of a repositioning of Dayo, where they're saying, hey parents, if you would like to have that conversation with your kids, if you would like to reward your kids for limiting their consumption of social media, and if you'd like a platform that helps you, manage and moderate all of that, then Dayo is the place to be. So that announcement came out this week. A whole new website and positioning and all those kind of fun things. And I'm a huge fan of Dayo and the founding team. I've had the chance to work with one of the co-founders in a previous startup that he was working on, and I always really appreciate kind of consumer facing products here in Portland. So I'm eager to see where this goes. I think it's a really smart repositioning because they're really getting into that pain point, like the pain point that parents have in negotiating with kids about their use of social media. And Dayo just makes a perfect way to make that a rewarding experience and conversation. So if you're a parent who's experiencing similar challenges, talking with your kids about limiting their consumption of social media, I highly suggest you check out Dayo. Okay, speaking of serial founders, Travis Rush, founder of Sidebox, exited Johnson & Johnson. He started this new company called Reperio. And what Reperio does is really get preventative medicine testing kind of stuff to people in their homes so that they can take those tests, get results, and understand how to manage their health or their potential health concerns more efficiently and effectively. So much like Sitebox sent folks contacts, Reperio sends folks these preventative tests that they can run in a home environment, and then again, as I said, manage the results. Well, part of the challenge of getting those tests to people is getting them to people's homes. And you know who has some great infrastructure for getting stuff to folks? That's right, Amazon. Amazon's built that infrastructure for getting stuff to folks. And so the news this week was Reperio has partnered with Amazon to get these preventative testing kits to people more effectively and efficiently. I haven't dug into this a ton. I just saw the news. I'm going to spend some more time exploring it. You know, Reperio keeps a pretty low profile, except I often go by their office in Southeast Portland and see their name on the side of the building. So they're often top of mind for me, but I would like to do a better job and be more diligent about tracking on the work that Reperio is doing, because they're really interesting founding team, serial founders on the founding team, and could be very much one of those startups in town that when people ask, what, you know, talk to me about a startup in Portland. I mean, I talked about last week, we got like Ahead Computing now is definitely one of those. We've got Agility Robotics down near Salem that we can talk about as an Oregon startup. But if you're looking for a local Portland startup working in the wellness and healthcare and preventative medicine space, Reperio should be on the tip of your tongue. I kind of hate to do this because I don't know if you've noticed lately, but like all the news channels are like doing a lot of Washington news lately. And I'm like, you're a Portland news channel, quit talking about Washington. But there's big news in Washington that I have to talk about. So call me a hypocrite. I don't care. This is what I do. So in Washington, they are considering some tax reform, which is really scary for the startup community. So as you well know, Washington has no income tax. They have sales tax, but they have no income tax. And if you've been in Portland or in Oregon for any amount of time in the startup community, you know the running joke is if you see a startup founder move from Portland to Vancouver, then you just kind of set your alarm for 6 months or so, because that's when their company is going to exit. Like everybody leaves here to move to Washington, where there's no income tax, and have been lower taxes for capital gains and qualified small business stock to date. But now the problem is the state of Washington is rethinking qualified small business stock and capital gains. So startups have been meeting with folks in Olympia, trying to convince them that this is not a good direction to take, that this could severely impact startup activity in Washington, could be extremely detrimental, and it would be harsh for some of the new projects that are going in Vancouver, Washington, where they've really started to gain some amazing momentum. They have some really interesting programs they're standing up with North Bank Innovations and the VIC, and I would hate to see that kind of thing get derailed by political bureaucrat stuff that they just don't understand the direct impact that they're proposing. They're thinking, they're like,
oh, VCs everywhere are getting rich because of this tax law.
And the reality is they would negatively impact founders and early employees at startups. So I don't think they quite get that. I want to make sure it's on your radar if you're in Vancouver and, you know, have the wherewithal to contact your local representatives and contact the Washington State folks to give them your feedback and to convince them that this is not the right move if they're looking to remain at the forefront of innovations and startups in that state. How caustic could these changes be? Well, let me read a quote from our friends at GeekWire about what this could do to the startup community. It would mean startup founders or early employees who take stock instead of a bigger salary, and investors who back early-stage companies would owe new taxes, potentially totaling tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars when a company is acquired and goes public. That's not good. On the other hand, if they want to go forward with that stuff, Portland is more than happy to have more founders here building things if they need somewhere else to live and hang out if Washington passes those laws. So just saying, it's kind of one of those bittersweet kind of things. I mean, we're right here. It's just a river away. So we would love to have some of that brain gain from the brain drain leaving Washington and around innovation and startups if Washington chooses to pursue that. I mean, who am I? Who am I to say what the Washington state legislature should do with their tax law? I am just someone on the YouTubes and the internet. So be aware of that. If you're in Vancouver, seriously, contact your folks, contact your representatives, tell them how detrimental this could potentially be. If you're elsewhere in Washington, I encourage you to do that as well. If you're, among my friends in Walla Walla, Washington, please contact the folks in Olympia, tell them this is a dumb idea because, as much as I like to have this friendly rivalry with Seattle and Portland or, Vancouver and Portland, that's playing dirty. Like having them change the law so that we get a little upside from it, that doesn't feel fair. That doesn't feel fair. I want to play fair. I want it to be a fair, fun competition between the two. So I want you to be aware of that. If you're in Vancouver, please take the opportunity to contact your local representatives and tell them to vote no on the proposed qualified small business stock and capital gains tax changes in Washington. Okay, and then finally, I don't often talk about like retail restaurant activity here, but I am a huge fan of the work of Angel Medina. I mostly here talk about Todos Media, which is his media company that does like great, high production food, coffee, spirits kind of content on YouTube and has tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of followers at this point. That's where I most often encounter Angel, but he also is a restaurateur and has owned coffee shops and those kind of things. And one of his restaurants, he just has decided it is not worth the effort to struggle to keep it open these days. So Republica will be shutting down. And that is awful and tragic and will be a huge loss to the Portland restaurant community. Really put us on the map for elegant Mexican cuisine in a way that was revolutionary and innovative for our community and for which we gained tons of accolades and, popularity because of the work that they did at that restaurant. But he has made the business decision that given the current environment, they're going to need to shut that down. So I will link up the post. Read the post, even if you don't care about restaurants, even if I don't even think this is possible, but even if you don't like Mexican cuisine, read the post. I mean, Angel is an amazing writer. As hard as it is to take in the scope of what he's sharing and the impact of what he's sharing, it is always beautifully written. I hate to say, I enjoy his writing regardless of what he's talking about. And he's lately talking about some really fucking hard things. So please do yourself a favor, read the post I link up, subscribe to his Substack, stay in tune with what he's doing, subscribe to Totus Media on YouTube because it's excellent content. Everything he does with content is excellent. Everything he does with food is excellent. Everything he does with coffee is amazing. Just do yourself a favor and subscribe to the Substack so you can stay in the loop, and subscribe to the YouTube channel so you can stay in the loop there. And again, sorry to see Republica go, but totally understand the businessy decisions required to make that happen. Okay. All right. So that's it. This week is heavy. It's just you and me now. This is generally the point in time where I share some secrets or behind the scenes stuff. This is generally where I deal with my gonzo journalism part of it. I don't like being part of the story. There are times where I am part of the story, and I try and share that stuff here so that you don't have to listen to it at the top. If you don't want to, you can just come here later and listen to me complain about what's going on. I don't think I'm going to edit this much. I don't really feel like editing this week. I feel like stream of consciousness is just kind of where I'm at this week, and energy levels really low and it's sad because on the positive side, like somebody told me that apparently I got mentioned like at an all hands meeting at OHSU, Oregon Health Sciences University up here in Portland, which is a world-renowned medical university, and that was odd and humbling to hear that. So I thank you. I don't know why that happened. I mentioned GeekWire earlier. Technically, which is a publication that originally started in Philadelphia, was kind enough to mention me and my work in a write-up on the Silicon Forest and the CHIPS Act, just delving into nostalgia and history a little bit, way back when. I started Silicon Forest in 2007. And soon thereafter, I began to encounter other people like, Jeff Slobodsky and Dusty Davidson in Omaha with their Silicon Prairie News, and eventually the big Omaha event. And Sean Blanda was another one back then, 2009 or so, that was working on what was called Technically Philly, which was the Philadelphia startup community blog that covered everything, like Silicon Prairie News covered the Midwest. And of course, John and Todd up in Seattle kind of saw those things happening and were like, hey, we should do something for Seattle. And now GeekWire has become this massive thing that they did exceptionally well. And I'm always a huge fan. Back in the day, we used to be kind of like similar, like in terms of size and impact, but they've absolutely knocked it out of the fucking park with GeekWire. So I don't really even I don't really even warrant competition from GeekWire these days. But if we want to pick up that friendly competition again, we can, especially if their team wins the Super Bowl. They may be a little heady about competition, and there may be another opportunity there. But it was just, it was one of those really, technically mentioning Silicon Forest kind of took me back to when all of those publications, and what was the one out in New York? I'm spacing the one out of New York. I think it began with the C, that, they would write about what was going on in New York. And, there's obviously Silicon Slopes out of Utah. And, there's just all these, there were all these little blogs that were like, we're really passionate about our startup community and we're going to talk about it. And there was the Bend one, the In Bend one. Anyway, their Boise one. So, yeah. That was just a really flood of nostalgia when I saw Silicon Florist mentioned in technically. So that was nice of them. What else happened? I met with a bunch of founders, been reaching out to a bunch of people in the community, people I haven't connected with in a while, just to catch up with them and see what's going on. Obviously I have ideas about what I should be doing this year. And all those kind of things. And then our friend Josh Carter, who I mentioned was on a podcast last week that you should go listen to, who mentioned had a LinkedIn post about the concept of the word startup and how startup, for many of us, had a very specific definition, and his argument was that it's time, much with the way Angel Oregon kind of expanded their purview, it's time we kind of expand the definition of startup and what that means and what type of company that is. And it created some good discussion there on the LinkedIn. And I chimed in a little bit, but it reminded me of this video that I had recorded about a year ago. A couple of videos, actually, that just kind of were circling around the same thing. And that, for the longest time, startup and venture scale were synonymous. But as startups have become part of popular culture, entrepreneurship and startup have become more synonymous. Anyway, it was just interesting, things to think about in the community, things to consider in terms of who feels like they're part of the community and who feels ostracized by the language we use. So those things are always important to think about. Man, this week was just heavy. So heavy. It was a heavy week. And if somebody as fucking privileged as me is feeling like it's a heavy week, I cannot even begin to fathom what other people are going through. But I want you to take care of yourself. Please hang in there. And until we get the chance to chat again, please keep up the good work.